Namaste, Guruji.
Namaste. Welcome.
Thank you for your presence. And this last few days have been a lot of opening to very different dimensions of my persona, I would say. To see the identity in more subtler forms and shapes. And just today I was contemplating, and a question came up that if it is so obvious, the identity, why didn't I see it before?
When you look out in your immediate environment, you see all the objects that are in the environment, right? What's the one object you can't see?
Maybe the wind?
No. You can see the wind by inference.
Yeah, true.
By a tree or something.
Yeah, like it makes its existence felt.
Okay. So when I ask you that question, what I'm meaning is you can see all the objects in the environment, but you cannot see your eyes.
True.
You can see your nose. You can see something on the other side of the room. You can see your hand. You can see all of your senses, even, but you cannot see your eyes. That's the only object that you cannot see. But you know that the eyes are there.
Yeah.
Because you can see the objects. Yes? So this is the same way. The awareness itself, or consciousness, or however you want to term it, is not a thing. You can't treat it as an object. You can only be aware. You cannot see awareness. And because of this, it becomes our habit over the course of a lifetime to infer awareness because we are aware of objects, people, senses, right? Tasting, touching, seeing. Yeah. So because we have awareness of those objects, we infer, without thinking about it, that there is an awareness itself, but we seldom look for it until someone points it out to us.
Or I do feel that till the point that I don't find anything interesting outside.
Yes.
Like I texted you in a last few weeks back that now that there are no stories, I just feel really bored.
Yeah.
So maybe because I'm losing interest, is that a byproduct of that? Just
Yes, and when you sent me that message, I said, well, let's talk about that the next time we meet, and then we didn't because other things were happening in the times we met, so we didn't film them.
Yeah.
But that question has lingered with me since you said, you brought that up. And my response to that I didn't give you then, I give you now, and that is very good. When you brought that to me, that you were losing interest in the objects around you, but you were becoming very bored, my response to you was very good. Now we can learn how to use boredom. Do you remember me saying that?
Yeah. And I thought it was a joke.
Yeah. No, it's not a joke.
Okay.
It's a pointer. It may be a pointer in the form of a joke, but it's a pointer.
Okay.
Because you have to lose interest in all of these external objects, all of these things which you have habitually been pulled out into.
Yeah.
You really have to lose interest in all of those to go beyond a certain point in exploring the question, who am I? You can do simple meditations, which like mindfulness of breathing, or visualization, something like that, mantra. These will momentarily pull you away from objects and give you some peace. But if you don't ask the question, who am I? As soon as you stop the mantra, as soon as you stop watching the breath, the mind will go back to its habit of moving out toward the objects around you. So when you become bored, back to that word, when you become bored, the possibility exists that you could become bored over and over and over and over until you lose interest in everything. And in that moment, you can take the interest, what is this that is aware? Who am I? This interest can take over. Now, the movement out into the objects begins to slow down and eventually stops. And the enthusiasm for this question, who am I? Or what is this? Or what is happening here? Or what is awareness? This rises, and it can rise dramatically.
Yes.
But the reason I said boredom very good and how do you use it is because as soon as you recognize that boredom is here, you only have one of two choices. Go back to your old habit of going out into some object or another, or become very interested in this question, who am I?
Wow.
And all that energy that used to flow out into the objects and into the experiences now turns to trying to answer this question, who am I? So it begins to explore throughout the whole body experience. Sight, taste, touch. It looks for this I. Of course it can't find it. So every possibility of turning outward, whether it's through asana, through chanting, through sitting meditation, all of these begin to fail.
Also the spiritual travel, I think for me, for a long time, spiritual travel. When I lived in the
pilgrimage
cities,
or something,
I would just go for a pilgrimage.
Retreats begin to fail. Some people go to retreat 3-4 times a year for 10 to 20 years. This begins to fail.
And it just feels like when you come back from there, that some part of you is still in the retreat and some part of you is still in the pilgrimage or the place, the power place you went to. But now what is happening is, I've done all of it. Like everything, the whole bouquet, and I am not struggling. I'm just, I don't know.
You're just here? Maybe? What? You are just what?
Empty.
Finish that. Very good.
I'm just
very good.
Bored. Like, okay.
Yes, but this is when spiritual life has the possibility to begin. Very good. So, what do you mean by I am just bored? And what is this attitude?
I don't know what to do with things. So nowadays I just chill. Like.
You just chill. That's right. But you also can, just because we're having this conversation for the sake of everyone, you can just understand that to be bored of spiritual life is like, this is a horror show for so many people. They have been involved in spiritual life and process for such a long time that it's horrifying to no longer feel like either anything is working or it is interesting at all. I'm just bored with it all. But this is the field, this is the garden that's been fertilized, and now you need to plant the seed. And the seed you plant is the answer to this question, what's now? And the answer is investigate who you are. Because even your spiritual journey, not the one where you went to the pilgrimage site or you went to the temple or you went to the retreat, the spiritual journey you've been on internally, when you feel like that has come to an end or it has failed you completely, this is the moment when you can penetrate past all of the coping mechanisms in psychological field, emotional field, and spiritual field. And now you can ask in plain truth, who or what am I? And that becomes the only thing that's important to you.
Yeah, like a lot of things that I believed as spirituality earlier, whether it's, for example, the healing modalities we spoke about,
Yeah.
or the books I used, and many other things which has really served me, they all also have sort of lost purpose now.
Yes.
Even like I was just speaking to someone about, say, Vedic astrology. I'm no astrologer or I don't understand. But I have used these tools at some point. Now none of them also seem to have a purpose.
Yes.
Is that also like a part of this process that you suddenly feel that?
Yes, but the metaphor that I use for this experience is it's like you have a car or a scooter. And in your garage, you have a box with certain tools in it so that if something happens and your bike won't start, you can check and see if the cable is loose. You have a certain wrench, and so you can do that yourself so that you don't always have to depend on other people, or you're not late to something, Or some people just like to do that kind of work. You can change your own
like
oil.
you enjoy the
So you have those tools,
itself,
but you don't carry those tools around in the toolbox on your shoulder all the time in case something happens to the bike or in case something happens to the car. The tools sit on a shelf.
Yeah.
They are there when you need them, but you don't need to give them attention all the time. And this is the same way. Any other tools that you have cultivated, whether psychological or astrologically or meditatively, when you feel like those things are no longer working, it's not that they are of no value. It's that you aren't in a place where you need them right now. So just leave them there. Be grateful for them.
Yeah, I think that's my inner conflict, that I'm feeling that there is no purpose of their existence at this point. So maybe I just wasted my time. It feels like I was...
Yeah, but who says this?
Yeah, like that's what
No, you just avoided my question. Who says this?
I think, the identity, because all of this...
No, really, look, who says this? You show me this one who says this. You see, anytime there's a judgment in the mind, anytime there's an opinion in the mind like that, which devalues your experience, always challenge it. Who says this? Because those things those tools may not be needed at this moment, but those tools are what brought you here.
Definitely.
Okay, so that's their value. Not that you are using them now, but that they brought you now. Yeah, that's their value. And this game that the mind plays that says, I wasted my time, you need to recognize that and you need to cut that because it's of no value whatsoever. So understand that part of what you're experiencing is because you are still living in time.
Oh. Wow.
And the whole experience of freedom or liberation or enlightenment one of the characteristics of it is you step out of time.
Yeah, that's the game.
Yeah, the mind loves to stay in time. It loves to stay in sequential.
The whole patterning. Yeah, I just saw the whole.
But if you step into the eternal, then you have always been here. In order to know yourself as being consciousness, there has to be this recognition that there is no past and there is no future and there isn't even a present moment. There is only now. Because past, present, and future are concepts, and within past, present, and future, everything that's experienced is concept. It's all mental concept. The only place there's no time and no concept is now. Now. And as we go through spiritual opening, awakening, or we settle or relax or sink into the heart, what we come to see is in the same way that you've lost interest in all of those experiences and so on from before, you also lose interest in the past. Not only the past of 1 year ago and 5 years ago and 10 years ago, but the past of a moment ago when we started this conversation. Do you have an interest in that? I have no interest in that.
More than interest, it just lost its reference now.
Yes.
And
are you interested in where it will go in the future? What does it matter?
Wow. So does it also mean that the expansion that I'm feeling right now, but it's also a state of mind, right?
What you're feeling now, what you're saying is expansion, is a perception in the mind that something was said and then experienced in a deeper way that caused the feeling of apparent expansion. But expansion into what? Something that wasn't here or something that is always here?
The opening that was experienced a few moments back felt like so there was some definition of the boundary to the opening at some point, and then it doesn't have any boundary anymore. But at the same time, I don't feel I am not grounded or whatever. So I do feel this might be a very amateur way of expression, but this is what it is. There is this audio I heard which it said that there is wrong samadhi and there is right samadhi. And the wrong samadhi is where you don't have awareness of what is happening. And like a trance, like an altered state of mind where you are not grounded, for the lack of better words. And then there is right samadhi where you're fully grounded, you're rooted, but at the same time you feel completely expanded. And I do feel I have experienced the trance many, many times. It's been probably my journey of 10 years and I have not been fully grounded, and I would agree.
Yeah.
I've not had control of my body, or I have, I've just slipped into it without my notice.
Yeah.
And now what is happening is the other side of the story, where this is how I used to feel, and I do feel very often, more than often now. But I don't feel I've lost any functional...
Well, this may just be the movement from Nirvikalpa Samadhi into Sahaja Samadhi. You just have to keep going. You just have to keep allowing it. Sahaja Samadhi is the natural state. So it does two things. It tells you that there is a natural state in which you are always here now, you are always grounded, and it is a samadhi. The definition of which is you are not attached to anything. Everything is coming and going within this natural state of being.
I feel more and more ease into it than last few weeks for sure. And I feel more, and there are these peak blissful moments also, no doubt about that, but then I know that it will leave. as well. So earlier when the bliss would happen, I would just go really crazy. I would just like dance and like, like I would have peak sadness and peak blissfulness for many, many years. And I would call it this dance of grief and grace. So probably what my question is right now, that how I feel about it right now, as if I'm okay with both.
Lose interest in both.
True that also. Yeah. Maybe that's the
This
next
is the
step,
way
I think.
sahaja actually develops, is that you go through those periods of grace and, what do you call it?
Grief and grace.
Grief and grace. You go through that, and ultimately you realize that those are states which are coming and going, so they're not so interesting anymore, even if they're very high grace and if they're very high grief or very low grief. There's just, one loses interest in that. Let's not say in the states, but in the movement from one state to the other.
That's a beautiful point.
And back again. It's like the self, as being consciousness, does not have as a characteristic movement.
So when we call something still, the essential element of it is absence of movement. It's not really something being stable. So I don't know, it's a very ironical concept.
So understand that you're still grappling with it as a concept. Just those kinds of questions, sometimes we just have to put aside because we realize that we're just not there yet.
Yeah.
It has not been our experience.
No, it's not my experience.
So if it's not your experience, don't dismiss it as not valid. Just say, this is not my experience yet. Because
it's not.
As we become more and more familiar with these subtle states, and we become more and more familiar with this sense of natural groundedness in these subtle states, then experientially we begin to understand what was being talked about. It's not a concept. We begin to have the direct perception or the direct experience of what is true stillness or what is true silence. And is there anything present in stillness? Is there anything present in silence? Is there any movement in stillness? Is there any noise in silence? You see, you begin to have the direct understanding and the direct perception of the ways in which the dualities of concepts, the way that we're talking about them, are resolved. And they're not resolved here, they're resolved here.
Something
direct
just
perception.
settles down. Some part of me goes in this inner conflict, and either we talk or I hear something or just sitting in a quiet. Something settles down, and then I can't remember why it started. I don't remember honestly why this whole inquiry started for me today morning. But all I know is that stayed. And then one speck of dust, basically, that creates the rattle, and then the rattling goes on for a while, and then it settles down.
But this is the dissolution of vasanas that you're describing. So that's just what that is. Understand that what you're saying, some dust is there. This just means that the perception, if you will, has become fine enough, subtle enough to see that speck of dust. But understand it's not just a speck of dust that is unnecessary. It's a speck of dust that says this is the residual of a tendency. Or that is dissolving in this life, in this moment. So it's valuable in that sense. And the way that it will be allowed to dissolve is to see it as dust or as a tendency or as a vasana, and don't pick it up. Don't touch it. Just observe it and it will let it dissolve on its own.
It's actually momentum. So how I see resistance is as momentum now. I don't see it as resistance, because any resistance, so this is plain physics, but I'm watching a science show, and one of the characters said this, and I was like, I paused the show and I'm like, yeah, all resistance is actually momentum, and I decide the direction in which it can go. Then why am I working against myself? All my life, the vasanas and the resistance, I worked against myself to make myself suffer endlessly. And now I don't want to. Like, why am I putting myself through this?
So what's the solution?
To put the momentum in and let it do what it's done. And
Stop the
then,
outward flow and turn it in.
turn it in. And all these senses are really good, servants. If we train them well, was the biggest eye-opening
Yes.
in last few days, that I have always followed a diet and I've always been a disciplined person given my health issues, and I never had a problem. So I used to say this earlier also, and I learned it somewhere in some health nutrition course, that everything is a habit. We are creatures of habits. Everything is how we train it to work for ourselves. And I was like, this was the biggest thing. My resistance was the biggest enemy that I always had. And so I took it as an enemy, all this while I had a bad relationship with it. And I condemned it and I criticized myself for doing things I did. And now suddenly I feel like, oh no, that was always a momentum. I could just convert it into momentum towards internal journey. And that's what I did, I guess, to get here as well, in some way. Not entirely. I'm still not able to entirely, sometimes process the whole of resistance. So when I feel too resisted, I just slow down or pause or just leave the situation. Or just dance it out or something like that. Like I just change and break the pattern, because I know what next. There is an automatic system in me that there is resistance, then you do this. And now that is not working. So I know that I'm going to be disappointed if I go through the coping mechanism. For example, if I smoke, it's not going to work. I've just stopped smoking, not because I have nothing, it just doesn't make sense. It is not working for me anymore. That coping mechanism was there because I had sadness and I could feel that, and then I would smoke and then I would feel my nervous system calms down, then I could come back to myself. So I used tobacco all my life to come back to me. And so actually when I look back, I feel what you're saying now. But at the same time, like I said, still wondering whether I needed the detour. Why couldn't I see it? That's I'm still sitting with. I wouldn't say I'm done with that one. But the resistance is the momentum.
Yeah, but it's really important that when that comes up in your mind, you don't just pass it by as part of some conversation you're having with yourself in your mind. You need to actually notice that that tendency or that habit or that tape loop is up again for you to say, why did I have to go through that for 15 years? There's only one answer, and it's very simple. Because you needed to. That's it.
Yeah.
You went through it because you went through it.
So it's a process, and that's how it works.
In this case, I can say it's your process. And so if you say, why did I have to do that? You're not honoring your process. You're saying there is something wrong, or there was something wrong.
Or there was a shortcut that I didn't see. That's what I felt.
Yes, but if you got here in 15 years, you took a lot of shortcuts you're not acknowledging. Because there are people who have been on their spiritual path for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 2 lifetimes, 4 lifetimes, 5 lifetimes, and they are still just coming to understand what you're understanding over the last 15 years.
Oh, wow. Wow.
You have to honor your own process. Chances are you actually have been on in this process for longer than this lifetime. And these are the fruits of what you've done before. And you are saying, but why did I have to be here for 15 years? There's a story. Two sages who are sitting for a long time with the Buddha under a big tree. They're sitting in the shade. One sage says, Master, when will I become enlightened? And he says, you will become enlightened in as many lifetimes as there are leaves on this tree. This is a big, Bodhi tree. Tens of thousands of leaves. And this man jumps up and he says, that's it, I quit. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to sit under this tree for the next 10,000 lifetimes. And he runs away. And the other man is sitting there very quietly and he's listening to all of this. And he says, Master, when will I become enlightened? Or will I become enlightened? He says, he reaches down, he picks up a small handful of leaves off of the ground. And he says, you will become enlightened in this many lifetimes. And this man jumps up and he starts dancing and he says, thank you, Master, thank you. I know because you have said so that my enlightenment is assured and only in that many lifetimes. And so he goes right back to his practice. And the story says that as soon as he sat back down to begin his meditation again, he became enlightened because of his deep level of trust in his master and his acceptance that his enlightenment was guaranteed. And in that process, he sped it up. So, yes?
True. The shift where you just said that, this is all concept of time, it just makes everything much easier and sensible also in some way. Just feels like, the instant of time is instant. That's why we call it the instant of time. So it's a very instant.
And the concept that goes along with that in Vedanta or Advaita is that there is only now. So, whether you feel enlightened in this moment or not has no bearing on the ultimate recognition that there will come a moment in which you know who you are and that all of your past falls away and you say, oh, my goodness, I spent 40 years on this path and it was a moment. Now I sit in eternity. It was well worth it.
True. Yeah, and all that hard work.
All that hard work was well worth it. And you see far enough back that you realize that you not only were doing it for 40 or 50 years in this lifetime, but that you were doing it for last lifetime, the lifetime before that, the lifetime. Because it's possible that you'll be not you in the personal way, but as the experience of eternity, you will be connected to all that came before. And so you will see that somewhere along the line, this being became interested in this whole idea of freedom and sat down somewhere and day after day, year after year, decade after decade, lifetime after lifetime, kept this recognition of the truth as possible, held on to that, nurtured it.
Wow.
And now it's bearing fruit.
And I always had this, so the definition of freedom kept changing, but the principle of freedom remained. What kept me on this track all my life was, what is real freedom? Is real freedom just running away from the house, not getting married, also
having all the money in the world,
having all the money in the world, or be also like I was an activist, so I wanted to change the world. And
yes.
I felt there were many definitions of freedom that fell away before I arrived to this definition. Even definition, forget about the experience, I don't know what that is. But just to arrive here at this definition of freedom is so precious, because all along my definition of freedom has changed from the very moment I was a teenager to becoming an activist, to become a life coach, and so on and so forth. What is our definition of freedom, I feel, definitely changes, but the principle doesn't change, and it keeps us. It's also like the carrot in front of the donkey. Sometimes I feel it was the carrot that has probably also sometimes worked. It worked like a carrot also, to only realize that it was a carrot. And now that this whatever unfathomable expansion that I am in, now I feel like, so just coming back and wrapping up and summarizing what you said and what we have been discussing, that the carrot is the journey, and then the essential part was to come here. So yeah, just making sense of the detour part as well. That creating that carrot was this idea of freedom I had as a child, which I went on to become a rebel and whatever. But it kept changing. The carrot grew bigger. Maybe it changed colors once in a while. But now I realize it was the carrot. I was all along free as well. So it's a very paradoxical thing. You want to say like, yeah, I mean not you. I want to be more grateful about what has happened, but at the same time, I see that this definition has changed far too many times to lose its value for me, to lose my interest in freedom now.
Yes.
So I'm losing my interest in the very carrot that brought me here.
Yes.
That is what my real itch.
So lose interest in defining freedom and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's... it's a big one.
You know the saying in Vedanta, neti neti?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, I'm aware, I don't know. This is not like that.
Not this, not this, not this.
Yeah.
This is the way it's typically, not this, not this, not this.
Okay.
So, and we use this in Advaita so that everything that rises, we don't grab at it, we don't cling to it. We say, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this,
Yeah.
not this, not this, not this. But the deeper meaning, the esoteric meaning in the deep literature is that which is, which we are talking about in this term right now we call freedom. If I say to you, now define freedom, you say, well, I've been through all of these iterations of freedom and I can't really define it.
No.
This is the esoteric meaning of neti neti. The esoteric meaning of neti neti is that freedom or liberation or the self or whatever you want to call it, the eternal, is neither this nor that. That's all that can be said about it.
Yeah, that's actually
We don't
quite
know where
accurate.
we're going
Yeah, that's very
because we
accurate.
cannot, if we try to say it's this, we miss it. If we try to say it's that, we miss it. So in this deepest meaning of non-duality, all we can say, whether we label it freedom or God or the self or enlightenment, all we can say about it is it's neither this nor that. Anything we can point to, any concept we can hold. And when we say this, we bring ourselves into direct encounter, if you will, with being consciousness, which is neither this nor that.
This fused my brain. It's just... Wow. Yeah. This is what was the itch today.
Very nice, very good.
Not being able to define. It's like, I lost the carrot, now what? Now bored. Give me something. How come spiritual seeking could end? No.
Yeah, but look where you're up against. You're up against this place where, with your mind, that all of the ancient texts and all of the modern teachers talk about, and that is you're up against the concepts of I don't know anything, there is nothing, there is only emptiness, there is only space, there is only being. That you're right there at that threshold now.
And all I feel is bored. So I'm...
Well, you absolutely don't feel bored.
Like mostly...
Maybe when you go home you feel bored.
Yeah.
But I don't feel boredom when you're sitting here asking these questions.
No,
and
this is like,
this.
I look forward to this.
So you are bored with all of the previous information you have.
Yes.
You are not bored with what you are looking toward now.
No.
You are not looking out here for that question to be answered. You're not looking out here to be satisfied, to be pleasured. You're not doing that anymore. Now you're looking in here and saying, show me the truth.
Also, I mean, it's not, so the motivation is not there. I think that's where also I was struggling a little.
How can you say that? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I don't
You have such a mind that immediately goes back to looking at emptiness and saying there's nothing there. And you do this week after week when we talk. And then you come back next week just brimming with questions and chopping through concepts. And I say, are you sure?
That's my talent, I guess.
Are you sure there's nothing there? Are you sure you're really bored? It doesn't seem... Understand that your mind is bored.
Yeah.
But that which has been calling you for many years is behind that boredom, and it's busy. It's testing, it's looking, it's working. And actually that boredom becomes necessary. Because until the mind becomes so bored that it just stops, that deep looking doesn't happen.
Okay.
Okay? So understand that the mind is bored, but the heart is not. And this is a good thing.
No, the heart is definitely not bored. Everything pierces deeper than it was ever. But at the same time, yeah, my mind does come back with brimming questions every week, and one thing at a time. And I'm also very happy with the process for the first time. Earlier I would be very uncomfortable, and like I said, I think I have had this narrative for a very long time, and I'm calling it a narrative now in the same conversation. That's great. That something shouldn't be this hard. And as a psychologist or as a problem solver, like in the corporate, I have been very celebrated for this, because I feel everything can be simplified for the lowest common denominator of the population.
Yes.
And what I found with Arunachala and Ramana was that I felt, who am I, is like it can work with anybody, no matter how much of a background they come with, because it has no
Or no
religious-
background.
Yeah, or no background.
No education.
It is so basic, and it is so subtle, and it's so simple, and it can just pierce through this entire gamut of things that are holding on our personality. And I just found the only reason I followed this path was that. Because this has been my principle.
You like that
it could be.
simplicity, yes.
Just
You have
the
an
simplicity.
intuitional understanding that simplicity is the way to go.
It is so basic, so
But
good, and piercing through it.
understanding the foundation of being as this kind of simplicity does not immediately sweep out the complexity of the mind.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
that is
just
what
important
I
to
needed
know
to
that.
hear. Yeah.
Because otherwise people get so disappointed and they struggle so much, you know. So just
honoring the complexity of the mind,
yes.
while staying
And
on
not
the
only
path.
honoring it, but realizing, like you said before, that when you realize that what you have thought was the enemy, what you thought was the difficulty, this enemy is now your ally.
Yeah, that's the momentum.
So this is really beneficial. If you understand the complexity of something about the complexity of your mind, you don't view it and say, why did it take so long, and why is it so difficult, and why did I have to do it? you say, oh, this is the process of turning the complexity of this mind into an ally rather than an enemy. So it's like, how do I use the complexity of this mind in order to become more simple? It's a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's very deep. And it's also very confusing for, I think, a lot of people. That's why they choose complex ways to come here. Because I do understand why I studied many other paths for so long.
Yes.
But all along I was like, no, Zen and inquiry. Like, for Zen also I feel very clear. Like, it's just, you just keep doing one thing for a very long time and something just shifts in you. They also really bore you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a part of boredom. I think the only reason I stopped practicing was because I was just bored. And then I used to see this yoga people or like people on other paths, you know, Kriya Yoga. And I'd be like, wow, they have a lot of material to work with, you know. They have a process to get up at this time, whatever. And my gurus were like, eat anything, get up anytime. Nothing matters. And I was looking for discipline, but those paths didn't entice me because I felt, do you need to be that complex? No, something simpler could work. This was my belief. But what I'm
that's how you
realizing
ended
is,
up in Zen.
and then the Zen part of, but then at the same time, I think the collateral beauty and damage at the same time about this is that the boredom comes in. And then the boredom, that resistance, like today I understand that I need to see that as a gift and not as an impediment in my journey.
Okay, so the question is, when you come to that place where you realize that boredom is here, then the question becomes, how can I use this? It doesn't become, I have to solve the boredom by finding some way not to be bored. It becomes, how can I use this feeling sense of boredom to go toward this recognition of the self? How can I use this?
Yeah, that seems like the most essential pointer at this point.
And this is true of everything. So it doesn't matter whether we're talking about boredom, we're talking about physical pain, we're talking about emotional pain, we're talking about mental pain, we're talking about the collapse of our spiritual life. Every single seeming experience that comes into awareness can be used for the recognition of the self once we develop this habit of asking, how can I use this? Because it's asking that question, how can I use this? That we tell the universe or we tell the heart, there is nothing you can throw this way which is a problem. Whatever you throw this way, I will use it.
I think it's only possible for me to do that if I am stable in the inquiry. If it takes me by a storm.
Well, that's just paradoxical. That's just,
then it takes me long to come back sometimes. Not now so much, but I'm also asking this question on behalf of a lot of people who are going to watch.
So just understand that it takes as long as it takes, and the important thing to notice about that is that no matter how many times you have this experience, you keep coming back. Whether you come back in one breath, one click like that, or it takes you a week to come back, or it takes you a month to come back. Is there any part of you that is ready to give up coming back?
No. Never.
This is the important thing to focus on.
Wow. And that part is the heart at the back, which is working.
That is the heart in the background.
Yes.
If it takes you a moment, that tendency, that samskara, was already close to finishing. If it takes you a month, that samskara still had some momentum or some energy. And then you come back to the recognition of the self as awareness, being, consciousness, bliss. If it takes you longer than that, then that just means that samskara had more energy behind it. This is why it's important, this comes out of the Buddhist tradition, that you notice when something has ended. So you notice when a tendency has ended, and you rejoice in that.
Yeah.
Whether
Celebrate
whether
it.
it has ended temporarily or it has ended permanently, and you just have a feeling, oh, I think that's it. It's done now. It's finished.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any difference. Just notice the end of things. And when a certain mind state or a certain heart state or a certain emotional state comes to an end, and you come back and you say, I am aware. That which is aware is here now. It wasn't here last week. It's been terrible for the last week, but it is here now. Thank you, thank you.
Wow.
The heart already recognizes this, yes. Otherwise, you see, you are still in that place where you think you are the one who's doing this spiritual journey or this path that you've been on for 15 years. You still think you are doing this.
Yeah.
You are not. You are being pulled in.
That's also true. Yeah.
By
the grace.
by the supreme, by the grace, by the timelessness.
Yeah.
You are being pulled in. And yeah, so all of this belief in a me who's doing something, who's understanding something, who is becoming something, all of this will dissolve as you go along. Okay. And you will realize that you never did any of it. That somehow through grace you were called in this lifetime to know what you know now. It was always your destiny. And you always knew it. So. Something has changed, but nothing has changed.
Yeah, there is nobody to recognize the change. So, who saw the tree fell or not? Maybe the tree never falls.
Yeah.
Wow. This is pretty insane. Or probably the most sane way of living.
Yes. Pretty sane.
Pretty sane. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. Thank you so much. So deeply grateful for this moment and this journey and this opportunity to sit with you.